Welcome back. As you may or may not know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy. My current project is something called SiliconDojo.com. Basically, the idea of what if high quality technology education was simply as accessible as running water. So, anyways, you can go to SiliconDojo.com. We have self study classes, Python, SQL, bottle web app framework, something called Moondream AI, I'm currently working on. We have Zoom classes. I actually just did a class on Zoom on Comfy UI. We do those every week or so. I have one-on-one sessions with people every Monday from 1 to 5 p.m. where we talk about their technology issues, career, professional development, all of those kinds of things. And so I do these videos basically to answer the types of questions that I get from students so that maybe there is a repository here so that I can help some other folks out, right? You know, if I'm sitting there doing a one-on-one conversation, that's very nice because it's a personal conversation with somebody, but that's also one-on-one. Isn't it better to do a one to thousands of people, right? If you're trying to get a message out. So, anyways, today I want to talk about how to deal with a recession as a technology professional because I fear it might finally be here. We might finally, after oh so many years, be getting to a recession. And I think it's going to be a shock, especially for a lot of the young folks out there. Again, it's interesting coming from my generation. Again, I'm getting close to 50 now. I'm 48, getting really close to 49. So it's close to 50. And the thing was, by my early 30s, I'd already been through 3 recessions, right? I graduated high school into recession, have been through the dot-com bust, have been through the Great Recession. And that all happened, by the time I was, early 30s. I was married, had a house, the whole 9 yards, and I was getting through the third recession of my adult life. The curious thing now is we have a lot of adults out there that really haven't dealt with the recession in their adult life. We've been through a bull market since 2009, since the Great Recession, quote unquote, ended in 2009. We have been in a bull market. Everything's been going up and up and up. And 2009 is now a long damn time ago, right? That is now 16 years ago. And one of the things to think about, right, is that if you went to college, right? So if you went to college and you were in college during the Great Recession, a lot of stuff may not have changed for you anyways, right? If you had a crappy job going through college, or if you were going through college on student loans, right? You went from college from 2005 to 2009, right? You come out into a crappy job market, but hey, you're a low quality employee anyway, so you're going to get a crap job because you're kind of a crappy employee, and then you move your way up. So we have adults, all right? Adults that have been through 20 years, 2 decades of basically not really having to deal with the recession personally. And I think a lot of people are going to cry. I think a lot of people out there are going to cry because they're going to be like, don't you understand how much I'm worth? It's like, oh, we all know exactly how much you're worth. Not much of anything, right? Because that's one of the interesting things. Like you talk with a lot of people now, especially in the technology world, right? And they're like, I am worth, again, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 a year. As I know, you're not worth that. You are worth whatever somebody is currently willing to pay you. You are worth whatever your last paycheck cleared for about 5 minutes after that paycheck cleared, right? Basically, you know how much you're worth every time your paycheck cashes. About a day after your paycheck cashes, you're not really sure what you're worth because you haven't gotten the next paycheck yet. But a lot of folks out there that don't really seem to grasp that concept, and I think there's going to be a lot of tears. Again, there's going to be a lot of node developers. Aw, poor node developers. Shed a tear for the node developers. I'm sorry. Y'all have a comment. Y'all have a comment. Anyways, so I just want to talk about this, right? So again, I've been through the dot-com bust as a real professional. Again, I went through dot-com bust. Again, had my army experience, had my college degree, had my MCSE, had all of this technology stuff, and literally got laid off from a pizza delivery job. Not even fired, right? If I am fired from a pizza delivery job, I'd be like, yeah, fuck that pizza. No, man, I got laid off from a pizza delivery job. Do you know what it's like to be a veteran with a degree, with certifications, get laid off of delivering pizzas? And the worst part is, after I got laid off, before I got laid off from delivering pizzas, when I got that pizza delivery job, yeah, when I went to the interview, they said, yeah, can you bring your resume to the interview to get a pizza delivery job? That is when you know your life is not going quite the way you thought your life was supposed to go, right? Anyways, and I think it's one of those interesting things to think about because again, there's realism about what is going on. It's not being pessimistic. It's just being realistic, seeing the world as it is, not seeing the world as you want it to be, and then figuring out where your position in the world is. If you take the world as it is, if you have a heart to heart with yourself, with the person in the mirror, I think you will get through everything, fine enough. Again, if you're delusional or whatever, you'll get whatever delusional people get. So the big thing to understand is that when these recessions happen, is that there will be an end. I think the most significant, the one takeaway that I will give you is when the recession hits or the depression hits, we might actually get a depression out of this crap show. The important thing to understand is it will end. The Great Depression ended. The Great Recession ended. Depressions before the Great Depression, they all ended. All the recessions obviously ended. One of the big things to realize is that things will get back to normal. Essentially, basically what happens with recessions and depressions is that things become economically out of whack, right? And so one of the big issues we have in our capitalist systems is we do not have a good way of doing minor changes to what's happening. Right, basically, it's imagine like every time we have a bull market, we have a plane that takes off. And the problem is as that plane is flying along, you're gonna find out there's problems with the plane. Maybe it's not quite so as aerodynamic as you want. Maybe the fuel tanks needed to be bigger. Maybe all kinds of issues, right? And the problem is with our capitalist system is we can't send somebody out while the plane is flying to tweak everything on the plane to make it fly better. Basically, how our system works is you send the plane up, the plane starts having problems, the plane starts having more and more problems, and then the plane crashes. And then basically people come around the crash site for the plane. They try to figure out why the plane crashed. They then build a new plane, fly that damn thing, and repeat. Again, if you go back and you look, especially in the United States, our economic cycles are generally between 8 to 15 years. Again, there is a recession or there is a depression every 8 to 15 years, going back infinitum. Again, it sounds wacky to talk about now, but again, there was a time period where we had overinvestment in canals. Canals were the new great technology, and they were investing so much money into canals. They were digging the shit out of canals, and the world was going to change because of canals. And then the railroads came along. And there's a whole bunch of issues with that. And then railroads, they got overbuilt. And then there was a crash. There was a crash, stock market crash because of the railroads. And that's what you find time and time again. So basically what happens in our system is we have a disaster. People build out of the disaster. Then essentially as they're building out of the disaster, they figure out certain valuable things. Like, oh, okay, so this generation needs X, Y, or Z. And then the first people that get into those things, they start making money, and then they start making more money. And then people are like, oh, wow, they're making money, so let me throw more money into that. And essentially what happens is we overinvest. Again, it's irrational exuberance. We start doing too much of that, right? And then you get to a point where you've done so much of that to the system can no longer deal with it, and then everything crashes. And then from that crashed mess, then you try to figure out what you've got, what resources the society now has, and the people build off of that. Again, if you think about the Web 2.0 boom, if you think about Facebook and you think about Twitter and all that, you don't normally think about the value of the dot-com bust. So during the dot-com era, major infrastructure companies were laying a crap ton of fiber lines, right? So basically the world was flat. So we're going to lay fiber lines everywhere so that everybody can be connected with these high-speed fiber lines. And big issue, they overinvested in fiber lines, like way overinvested in fiber lines. We had more fiber lines than we knew what the hell to do with. Again, you had the dot-com bust, and essentially all those fiber lines were already in the ground, but they never get they never got what's called lit up. Right, so they were called dark fiber. So back in again the beginning of my IT career, or like a little bit past that, right, that was one of the big phrases: is dark fiber. Right, these fiber lines that had already been run, but they had never been lit up because the economy went boom before they were. Well, the thing is, Facebook comes in, Twitter comes in, we have the Web 2.0 boom, and all of a sudden they actually do need a tremendous amount of bandwidth. Again, you start thinking about things like YouTube, you start thinking about that kind of stuff, it needs a lot of bandwidth. Well, hey, guess what? We already have a massive amount of fiber lines that have already been run that you can buy for pennies on the dollar, right? It costs, $50 million to run these fiber lines, and you can buy them now for $1 million and walk away with it. That is one of the things that help Web 2.0 to take off. And some of the big things to be thinking about with these recessions is that things will normalize, and then we'll have a bull market again, and then it'll explode again. So hey, something to look forward to. But I think it's important to be thinking about that, because so many times when these kind of economic disasters happen, it's so easy to think that this is how it will always be. Again, humans have this weird capacity to think however now is how it will always be. Again, like there's this idea like the technology industry will keep going up. Again, I like technology. I play with AI. I mean, I do technology all day, but it's idiotic to think that the technology industry is always going to be, there's this fucking hockey stick that's going to go up. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not how these systems work. But right, people have this idea. Oh, because today technology is going up, that means tomorrow technology is going up. That means it will always, right? Whatever is in our current mindset, that's how the world will always be. Even though, again, like I say, when we talk about these recessions, again, 70s had a recession, 80s had a recession, 90s had a recession, 2000s had two recessions. Again, the only time period, right? It was from 2009 all the way to now. Somehow we skipped over recessions. Some surprising way, when you put interest rates down to 1% and then you print money, you can pretend like the economy is doing fine. I wonder why that is, right? But anyway, so when the great disaster finally happens, the important thing to think about is in a few years, the disaster will be over. Again, one of the weird things getting a little bit older in life is how fast time goes by. Did you realize that? The Great Recession was 16 years ago. 16 years ago. I mean, officially it was 16 years ago. I would argue it didn't really wash out more or less until 2012. But holy hell, even that's still 13 years ago, right? It's been a long time. I remember going through the Great Recession. The Great Recession sucked. There's nothing good about the Great Recession. All of that was ass. But then it was over. And then we had a bull market. And then we got stupid, as we always do. And now we're about to go into yet another disaster, because that is a cycle. So the first thing that I want you to be thinking about with this is that, again, it will end too. It will end. The bull market will end, and the disaster will end. It all keeps just trucking along. These are just cycles. The next thing that I want you to be thinking about is that there's no shame in not getting paid. There is a mountain of shame in not working. So this is going to be an important thing, especially as a lot of you folks get laid off, as there are mass layoffs, right? We've already had a lot of problems in the tech industry. Again, hundreds of thousands of tech employees were getting laid off in the past year and a half or so. Then we had the administration just devastate the government. I don't know, it's like 200,000 employees out of the government alone had been laid off. And that's before all of these tariffs and everything hit. So one of the big things is that when the layoffs happen, those are going to be brutal. One of the first things to be thinking about is that it's not personal. Again, everybody wants everything to be personal, especially in this modern world of Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm the center of the universe. No, you're not. No, you're just a cog in the machine. And here's the deal, right? When the old machine is obsolete and they buy the new machine, they throw out the entire machine, including all the cogs, right? Think about this with Jerry Berg. He wasn't laid off during recession, but Nerdgasm, right? So Nerdgasm 2015, he was a high achiever at Microsoft, coder at Microsoft. He got all these awards, all that kind of stuff. One day he walks in and his entire department was liquidated. 2,500 employees. And that was the thing. It wasn't personal. He was not laid off. He was not fired. His department was liquidated. Your department's got what? And so one of the things to be thinking about with the layoffs is that's not personal. It's not, you did not get laid off, really. I mean, you got laid off, but it wasn't you. They didn't say, Bob's getting laid off. They said, we need to dump 100 employees. And Bob happened to be one of the 100 employees that was dumped. And I think that's an important thing, right? Because again, so many people want this to be personal, and then they start asking, what did I do wrong? And the thing, there's probably things you probably could have done better. Let's be honest, there's probably things you could have done better. But on the whole of it, you most likely didn't in particular do anything in particular wrong. You were just one of those 100. It was either Bob or Sue. Why did Bob get fired? I don't know. Sue wasn't in the office. Sue was in the bathroom when they were laying off employees, so they missed her. Right? That's kind of how it works, right? So that's an important thing. Like as you get laid off, don't think about it too personally, because so many people, again, you think about depression, you think about anger, you take all those emotional issues, and then again, one of the questions is where does that get you? In an impersonal society, taking things personally is just a path to abject insanity, right? So it will be over, and it's not personal. Those are things to think about. The next thing to be thinking about then is if you do get laid off, what the hell are you going to do? Because one of the big things to be thinking about is what happens again when the recession is over. So you get laid off, especially if you get laid off in the beginning of the recession, it's gonna be years. Again, we'll work it out. We'll figure it out. It's gonna be years, right? And so if you get laid off now, and maybe you don't get a normal job for 3 years, or you're not able to get a normal job for 3 years, that is going to be a hell of a gap in your resume. One of the things I've talked about before with hiring managers, again, whether it was in 2000 or whether it's in 2020, is they want to see a story. They want to see a story that matches the story of their organization. If they look at you and they're like, okay, you trucked along with jobs all the way up until 2025, and there's a blank spot between 2025 and 2028, what's that about? If you can't give a good story, they're just gonna throw you in the circular file, right? This is the real filing cabinet of the business world. You might be like, well, that's not fair. Who cares? It's not personal. Right? Well, what you have to be thinking about is, again, in 2028, when things start going back to normal, they're going to have 100 resumes on the table. They're going to have 1,000 resumes on the table. And again, they're hiring 1 or 2 or 5 people out of hundreds of resumes. One of their first jobs is simply to eliminate a number of those resumes so that they can get that stack down to a reasonable number. And so that is why the story is so important. And so one of the things you have to really consider is if you get laid off and you're not getting a job, how are you going to fill in that story? How are you going to tell that human resources person in 3 years that you're a winner? You weren't one of the losers that got laid off. You're a winner that did, and then you fill in the blank. Right? And so when you fill in the blank, that's the kind of thing to be thinking about. Do you go back to school? Again, I did talk to a student recently on Monday before these tariffs went through. Oh my God. They're having a problem getting a job. One of the things I recommended is that they stay in school. They're in a master's degree program. One of the things I said is go for that doctorate, right? If you can't land the job that you're looking for now, and I said it looks like it's going to get economically worse. Anyways, then maybe the thing is go for the PhD program and power through that. So think about this. So right now, if you have a certification, let's say you've got your whatever, you got Oh, you know how to do Python or Node. You're a Node developer, but you just went through a boot camp. You didn't get a degree. A bachelor's degree is 4 years. Again, well, it is kind of weird now because I also don't know. I don't really fully understand what the administration is doing with many things. Anyways, a year ago, I would say you can get loans and such. But anyways, one of the things to consider is if you go for a bachelor's degree now, again, 4 years takes you off the board for 4 years, takes you off the employment board for 4 years, and it makes sense from a story standpoint, right? I went through a boot camp. I had this job doing X, Y, or Z. I realized at that job I needed a specific skill set in order to progress further in my career. Ergo, that's why I went into this bachelor's degree program. I didn't go into my bachelor's degree program because I laid off and didn't know what the fuck else to do. I went into the bachelor's program because I had a vision of where I want my career to go, and I realized that this bachelor's program would give me the skill sets I needed to excel. Doesn't that sound good? Right? Again, or if you already have a bachelor's degree, again, you go into a master's degree program. And one of the things with master's degree programs is you can accelerate them. You can accelerate master's degree programs down to a year, or you can stretch them out. You can stretch them out a little bit. You might be able to stretch that master's degree program out to like 3 years, maybe, right? Again, if you can get some internships, or you can do this or that. Again, put some fluff in there. Put some fluff for the reason for why your master's degree took 3 years. But again, you get laid off in 2025. It takes you a couple months or whatever to get in the master's degree program. You're in the master's degree program. You stretch that little guy out to about 3 years. That gets you into 2028. Right? And again, if you go for the master's degree program, maybe you go for the MBA. Again, go for skill sets that are actually going to be useful. Do not go for a basket weaving master's degree, right? Again, yes, you're taking yourself off the board for 3 years, but you also want to do something that's valuable for 3 years. So maybe you go for the BA. Hey, maybe you go for like the Juris Doctor. Again, you know me. I'm all for that Juris Doctor. Going for that law degree, right? But basically, you go into that, and again, that takes you off the board for a couple of years to try to wait until the disaster is over. Again, if you look at it like when the Great Recession happened in 2009, you have professionals that get laid off. Professional gets laid off in 2009. Again, it was working its way out of the system by 2012. Again, the Great Recession, the worst recession since the Great Depression, we were getting out of that by 2012. So again, that's 3 years. So that's basically a master's degree program. You come out, you can't do anything about it. You don't have a job anyway. You're not making money anyway. You're just spinning around in circles anyway. You might as well get a damn master's degree. And then you have the master's degree, and not only do you not have that blank space, but you also now have a master's degree. Again, one thing to be thinking about in the future is don't think about just think about tomorrow. Just don't think about a year from now, but think about a decade from now. A decade from now, do you want to look back over a 2 or 3 year period and just, remember when you sat in the house all day drinking way too much beer staring at a wall? Or do you want to look back on when you got your master's degree or your Juris Doctor? If I told you about your law degree. Anyways, is that what you want to be thinking about? So that's one of the things that can take you off the board. Another thing to be thinking about is, as a technology professional, again, doing consulting work. Consulting work is a great way to slap a Band-Aid over your resume. And we all know what consulting work means. But it's kind of one of those nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We all know what consulting work means. Again, and I've seen it on resumes, right? And unless you've got employees, don't get me wrong. If you've got employees and you got $1 million clients, then consulting work is consulting work. Most people who have consulting work on their resumes, they've got nudge, nudge, wink, wink. They've got consulting work on their resumes. So it's like, oh, yes, in 2025, I decided take agency in your life. I decided to be a consultant. I realize, and that's one of the things too, is for love of God. I know I'm dealing with a lot of Gen Zs out there, a lot of young millennials. The victim mind, nobody likes the victim mindset. Nobody likes a sad sack. Nobody wants to hire a sad sack. I got laid off and I was gonna starve to death, so therefore I went out behind the 7-Eleven and slapped in ram sticks. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Take agency in your life. In 2025, I realized all these tech companies out there, they're doing all these massive layoffs. I saw, with the position that I was in with my company, I saw that they were laying off people in my positions, willy-nilly, because I guess that's how Trump does things. And I saw that there would be an opening. And that is why I created my consulting company to fill the gap that these C-level executives didn't realize that they were creating. Again, who do you want to hire? Or I saw a gap. Take agency. For love of God, take agency. Stop crying. Stop crying. Nobody cares. Anyways, so you become a consultant. Now, the thing is, when you become a consultant and you start getting clients, the cool part about getting clients is people don't ask you a lot about your clients. Now, if you're going for FANG, I don't know, or Mange as I call them. Again, it's no longer FANG. FANG was Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. But Facebook changed their name to Meta, which now means it's Mange. Just gonna put that out there. How is Mange gonna age over the next 4 or 5 years, I wonder? Went from FANG to Mange to dead. Anyways, so again, if you're going to go for a Mange company, again, you probably got to jump through some more hoops. But a lot of normal companies out there, what they want to see, they want to see that you're working. What they want to see is that you take agency in your own damn life. What they want to see is that if they give you a task, you'll solve the problem without blubbering and crying the entire damn time. Right? So you go out, you become a consultant. What does that mean, Eli? You just start doing work for other people. Again, did I tell you that one time? You know how I got one of my best clients? I got my best clients by misunderstanding the question. So yeah, after the dot-com bust, right? The dot-com bust, right? So during the dot-com boom, again, 24 years old. I swear, I had multiple people. They're like, Eli, you're gonna retire in 5 years. You're on the 5-year retirement track. It wasn't one person, like random people. I was like, Anyways, that did not work out. Anyways, so I got laid off a pizza delivery, had some other stuff going on. Anyway, so I was a consultant. So I put up pull tab signs. I wasn't even really a consultant yet. I was just putting up pull tab signs just so I could buy some decent beer. I literally wound up, again, a temporary file clerk job, making $10 an hour. My entertainment was $10 gallons of vodka in my crappy little room that I rented for $300 a month on the outskirts of the ghetto in Baltimore City. That's where my life was. Anyways, right? So I put up some pull tab signs, trying to make my life a little bit better, get agency in my own life, and I was going out there trying to get business clients. So I go and I schmooze with this one business client, and then I get the secretary to call back. They're like, yeah, we really like you. Seem to be a pretty nice person. We're a little concerned about your qualifications, though. How many clients do you have? And to be clear, I wasn't actually lying. I wasn't trying to lie. I wasn't even trying to shine the turd. I just answered honestly. So it was like, well, I fixed my landlady's computer and I fixed this other person's printer, right? Because I put these pull tab signs up and people have like called and I fixed stuff. And so I was like, yeah, I think I've got about 20 clients. I shit you not. She's like, oh yeah, that's great then. Yeah, we'll have you out on Monday. Yeah. Anyways, after I hung up the phone, I realized, oh, that probably was not what she meant by clients. Oh, well, right? So anyways, you go out there and you get clients. Grandma is a client. Your church, your temple, or synagogue is your client. Anybody you can work for is your client. You go out there and you do work as a consultant and you get paid as much as you can try to get paid. Again, maybe you start at $25 an hour, then you move up to $50 an hour. The important thing isn't necessarily even how much you're getting paid. They do try to get paid more. The important thing is that you're out there and you're actually working. When you go back to try to get a job and they look at your resume, they're then going to see a contiguous, this is the job you had, this is the job you had, this is your job you had, this is when you became a consultant. And then they say, oh, why do you no longer want to be a consultant? And you're like, to be honest with you, QuickBooks sucks. And then everybody laughs. Everybody does the nod. Yes, QuickBooks does suck. And then they move on. Again, that's the kind of thing you can do. Again, it's that whole that you're actually a player, that you're actually a player. You say those types of things. Like, again, employees don't understand how much QuickBooks suck. Like when you're just sitting there at QuickBooks and you're looking at you got the double whatever, and for some reason you're like $5.06 off. You're not $5 off. You're not 6 cents. You're $5.06, or again, you're like $524 off. What the hell is this? And then you got to go through a year of receipts and everything, trying to figure out where the hell did 24 cents come from, right? Everybody, if you've been there, they've been, oh yeah, QuickBooks does suck. Anyway, okay, that makes sense. Or again, health insurance sucks. Or hey, I did the really, there's a lot of stuff I enjoyed about the consulting thing. I really enjoy the entrepreneurial thing and all that about being a consultant. The issue is, honestly, I'm more of a technology person, and I was spending so much time doing the business aspects, again, QuickBooks and advertising and all that. I really just like to focus on engineering again, right? Again, that is story. That makes sense. That is going to help you get employed going into the future. The other thing to be thinking about with this, again, so we talked about going to school, go to school. We talked about, becoming a consultant. The next thing you need to be thinking about is, what is the skill set that's going to be valuable to you once the recession is over? Or what is the skill set that's going to be valuable to the world once the recession is over? So this is something that I used to get a lot of crap about. Funny, I don't get so much crap about it anymore. All right, so I had a computer repair store. We do a small business, basically a small MSP. Anyways, we made a lot of money repairing computers. Made so much money repairing computers. Again, $150 to deal with viruses. Hey, you got viruses on your computer? I paid $5 for a copy of McAfee. We billed you $150. We literally had 4 computers set up at any one time. You just sit there, you run down the checklist on all 4 computers. You can make so much money in a day. You make $1,000 a day just fucking wiping out viruses on computers. Anyways, one of the things I looked at is when the Great Recession happened. Again, I had to let go of my employees, that kind of thing, looking at the reset. One of the things I realized, because netbooks, those are gone now, but netbooks and nettops are coming out. And I realized that these were non-repairable computers, right? So all the computers up until that point in time were pretty non-repairable. Again, we repaired inverters and laptops, repaired laptop screens. Almost any problem in a laptop other than a Mac could be repaired relatively easily. Even Macs could be repaired just not so easily, right? Everything was very repairable. Again, I saw those net tops coming down. I saw the netbooks coming down the pike. I saw the smartphones coming down the pike. And the argument that I made for a long time is basically all this stuff is essentially getting epoxy together. It's very hard to repair. The components are not as easy to be able to get a hold of. Again, Vista was more secure than Windows XP was. It was a crap show on its own, but it was more secure. The next operating system coming down the pike, Windows 7, was even more secure than that. And one of the things that I realized is that the computer repair business model was just going to be brutal, right? And that was one of my considerations when I shut down my business. It was like, okay, we've had this recession, so recession has happened. So I can work 12 hours a day. I can work 12 hours a day for the next 3 years to get this business through. I could keep employees. I could keep the building. I could work my ass off 12 hours a day for the next 3 years in order to keep this business going. And in 2012, what is that going to look like? Once we are through this recession, I've been working 12 hours a day to get through the recession. What value am I really going to have? And I looked at it and it was like, the value that I'll have is a business that progressively is getting less valuable by the day, which is basically how it was. Again, before 2010, everybody knew that did computer repair businesses. They were hiring, growing. After 2010, even the people that still had computer repair businesses, they were laying off, laying off, laying off, laying off. They're basically they were mitigating the damage being done to their business by slowly laying off people or hiring new people at ever lower rates. Right, and so that's one of the things you need to be thinking about again with your skill set. Maybe you're a Ruby on Rails developer now, and you've kept your job because again, Ruby on Rails still needs to be supported. Or a PHP developer, you go, girl. Hey, I like my PHP, but it is 2025 now, right? Or you're one of, again, you have one of these skill sets. One of the questions to be asking yourself, again, with the recession, especially if you get laid off, is what do you think is going to be valuable in 2028? Do you think when the market rebounds and people start hiring again, do you think they're actually going to be hiring for the skill set that you have? Again, if you're going to be going through this economic disaster anyway, maybe it's time to, go back and to hit the books. Again, maybe Rust. I'm not telling you what, because God knows how all this stuff works. Again, I still think it's hilarious that like JavaScript is the language of the 2020s, but whatever. Anyways, maybe it's Rust, maybe it's C#, maybe it's Node. God help me, maybe it's Node, right? But one of the things to be thinking about is what do you think the technology that's going to be valuable in 2028 is going to be, and then start targeting your skill set towards that particular technology. Again, so that once you get through this, right? So you get laid off, you start your consulting company, you do a whole bunch of work for grandma or whatever, the grandmas of the world, right? Grandma LLC, I don't know. Anyways, you do that work, you're also then upgrading your skill sets so that when you go back, you're like, look, I was a Ruby on Rails developer, I then created my consulting company. When I had my consultancy, I realized the value of Dart. Do people still use Dart? I don't know. I realized the value of Dart, and that is when I became a Dart expert, and that's why you should hire me. And again, think about the agency there. You became a consultant, you were supporting customers, you saw a need in the market, that's why you upgraded your skill set. Man, that's a story. That's a story any HR person would love to hear. Right? So anyways, that's a thing to be considered. And again, think about that with your career. Like, where are you at your career? Again, when I started doing the tech education, 2009, right? Again, I had already been doing tech since 96. So what is that, 13 years? I'd already worked in the corporate world. I'd already been a consultant, had already been an employer. Again, when I started doing education, that was one of the things I looked at. Is again, where am I going in my career now? Like if I'm looking for the next step, is getting the next Microsoft certification really do I want to be? Do I want to be back elbow deep into RAM chips or whatever else? Or right? And that's one of the things that got me into the education realm. And again, for a while, it was a while ago, things go up and things go down. For a while, again, YouTube and all that did me very well. And so that's one of the things to be thinking about. Again, like if you've been working in the tech world, right? Now you've been working on the bull market, right? You started as a JavaScript developer in 2009, and you were just an expert Node.js person right now, and you get laid off. Here's a question. Again, you just gotta ask the person in the mirror. Don't tell me. I don't care. Talk to the person in the mirror. Person in the mirror. In 2008, do you still want to really be a Node developer? Here's a more interesting question. In 2008, do you really still want to be a developer? Again, you just get tired of doing stuff. Again, you talk to the kids, like the 19-year-olds. I want to code forever. So yeah, of course, you fucking say that at 19 years old. You've only been alive 19 years. You've only been alive 19 years. My MCSE is significantly older than you. My MCSE is from 2000. Let me just say, you do it for 5 years, you do it for 10 years, you do it for 15 years. At a certain point, right, everything gets boring. Everything gets tiring. Everything, there's a point to move on. And so one of your questions is this a natural breaking point to move on? Look, I've been doing all the coding and everything for a long time, right? I've always wanted to be a founder. I've always wanted to be a founder, to create a startup company. Again, right now we're going through this economic idiocy. So maybe that's not, maybe it's not the time to launch a startup right now. But what if I got the business skills? Again, so many startup founders I know wind up getting their MBAs. Go and get an MBA, a 3-year MBA to get you through to 2008, right? Or 2028. Right, you go to the MBA, you learn about accounting, you learn about finance, you learn about advertising and marketing. You get those high level skills and how a business is run. Again, you get past the economic crap show. You now have your 15 years experience in coding, plus you have your MBA. That is an incredibly strong position to put you in for the next phase of your life. Again, that next phase. When this recession happens, is it time to just do what has to be done to kind of bridge over this financial idiocy and just keep going as you're going? Or is it time to go up and to launch into the next thing that you should do? Again, because that's the thing, is we're all beasts of inertia, right? We are going to do something tomorrow because we did it today, and we did it today because we did it yesterday. It's just how the human brain works. Again, the human brain burns a tremendous amount of energy, and so one of the things that humans do in order to try to keep down the amount of energy that the brain uses is we create patterns so the brain doesn't have to use as much energy. And so that's one of the things, we just get into this inertia. Right? We do today something because we did it yesterday, because we did it the day before. Again, it's like with exercise, right? So I run 6 miles every morning. Every morning I run 6 miles. You know what makes it really easy? Because I ran 6 miles the day before, and I ran 6 miles the day before, and I ran 6 miles the day before, and I ran 6 miles the day before. And you may think, wow, it might be hard to run 6 miles every day, but I've been running 6 miles every morning for so long that to not run 6 miles in the morning makes me feel weird. I feel off for the entire day. Oh, I don't want to feel off, so I'm going to run 6 miles. Well, that's the thing. It's like, think about that with your career. You're doing whatever you've been doing because you did it yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before and the day before and the year before and the decade before, right? And you just kind of keep doing it because of its inertia. And it's hard. It's hard to break inertia. It's hard to like stop inertia and do the next thing, because you never know. You might, right? Again, I run every day. Again, I've been running for a long time now, right? If I stopped running and then I started lifting weights, I could hurt myself. Again, the nice thing about running is very, very low, whatever for me. But I lift weights. Maybe I hurt myself, maybe I get myself, I've got to go find a place to lift weights. I've got to come into there's all this shit that goes into it. Oh, that's a pain in the ass. But think about this. What if I went out to run tomorrow morning and then I kind of sprained my ankle a little bit, right? I go out there, I run, I step into a pothole, ow, right? I go to the doctor, the doctor's like, oh, you fucked up your ankle a bit. You've got to stay off your ankle for a year. Well, guess what? No matter how I feel about inertia, I'm not going to run tomorrow because right, I just screwed up my ankle. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll go to the gym. So then I'll go to the gym and I'll lift some weights and I'll do that stuff and and it's like, oh, look, I get jacked this way. The only reason I changed was because that inertial change. Again, with the running. Again, it's a real thing here, right? So I was always running down by the river. So again, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. There was this beautiful river run. There was a beautiful, oh, so sad. Anyways, it was 9 miles. It was 4.5 miles out, 4.5 miles back. Absolutely beautiful river run. And that's all I ran, right? Because we were 2,000 feet up. It's a little harder to breathe up here, right? Wasn't the best shape anyway. So I didn't really want to run hills. I don't like running hills. Running hills isn't fun. So even though I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a place that is hill, I just ran by the river. The river is flat. I'm just going to keep running by the river. Well, the thing was, we had the biblical flood. Helene came through. And yeah, that river path does not, oh, so sad. I mean, like, really doesn't. Oh, it's just fucking, it's a disaster. Anyways, so it's gone. So I'm used to running, but the path that I normally run on is gone. Ergo, my inertia is broken, and that's when I started running in the neighborhoods. And now, doing my 6 mile run, I get about 400 to 500 feet of elevation gain during that run. I would have never, and I did never do neighborhood runs because I thought they were too hard before Helene came through and wiped out the place that I normally did a run. So one of the things to be thinking about again, right? Again, think about it. Think about Helene. Think about this economic disaster is the same as a natural disaster, only to your career. Right? You've been doing this and you haven't gone for your MBA. You haven't gone for your Juris Doctor. You haven't thought about learning a different technology because that's hard. That's hard. All of a sudden, you got this economic disaster. Well, you can't do what you did yesterday because you're just not allowed to anymore, because if you show up on the building, they're going to call the cops, right? Maybe that's time to figure out your equivalent of running through the neighborhoods. So I don't know. There are some things to ponder, because the ripple effect, and I think the final thing with this is the ripple effect. You're not going to understand the ripples of this disaster until it's over. Again, that was the interesting thing with the Great Recession, is when everything exploded, is again, like when Bear Stearns fell, and most of us were like, oh, poor Bear Stearns. Well, I didn't say poor Bear. We didn't give a fuck about Bear Stearns people. Like, oh, poor little Bear Stearns people. Oh no, you can't wipe your ass with dollar bills anymore. I feel so sad for you. Anyways, right, Bear Stearns fell in 2008. We didn't give a damn, right? Didn't affect me. I was growing. We were still growing in 2008. Then the stuff with the real estate market hit. We were still growing when the stuff with the real estate market hit. Then the contractors that dealt with the real estate market, they got hit. We were still growing. Again, so Bear Stearns fell like summer 2008. We did not get kicked in the nutsacks till April of 2009. And you don't necessarily understand how all of it's going to play out until it's over. Again, we talk about like the dot-com bust. Again, they were hiring underqualified people to do jobs during the dot-com boom, and then after the bust, even when companies had the money, even when they had the problems, they still were not hiring technology professionals. They were so scared. They had such a bad experience with underskilled people during the dot-com boom that after the bust, they just didn't want to deal with us anymore. And so they just fucking refused. Even when they needed us, they refused to hire us, right? That definitely wasn't expected, right? And that's one of the things to be looking at with all this, is that when the economy goes sideways, it's going to go sideways in weird ways that you might not necessarily expect. And you just got to kind of ride it. Again, being here in Asheville, North Carolina, I'm curious, right? We got so many remote workers here. What happens when all the remote workers lose their jobs? What happens when remote workers that were making $250,000 a year, who now live in a redneck mountain town, lose that job and can't get no other? That is a very curious question. How does that flesh out? Will those people flee someplace like Asheville? I no longer have my power job. I can't do this thing in the mountains. I'm going to leave. Or do they buckle down in Asheville and this becomes, I mean, it's not going to become the next Silicon Valley, but I don't know. Becomes the next Silicon Asheville, let's just say, right? Right? Do they leave? Do they flee? Or do they buckle down? Again, who knows? Again, looking at Miami, my wife and I were thinking about moving to Miami. Do more people come to Miami? Do more people leave for Miami? How does that work out? All right? Do people do you do more Zoom stuff, or do you focus on more local stuff? I don't know. You won't know until it's over. And then people will sit back and be like, I saw that. I knew exactly what was going on. And like, fuck you. You did. But anyways. So yeah, that's some stuff to consider. Some stuff to ponder. It will be over, but it will be painful. I don't like this. Again, my wife and I have actually been talking about it, because, again, the Great Recession sucked. The Great Recession sucked. Oh, sucks so hard. Sucks so hard. Oh, that wasn't a 9-year-old girl popping around the corner and popping you in the ball sack. That was like Gina Carano. That was just Gina Carano whipping around the corner and popping you in the ball sack. You're like, this isn't funny anymore. Ah. Oh, it's gonna be a hell of a thing. And I'll be curious because I mean the important thing to understand is like I mean there's a question about even if the Great Recession even really ended or the ramifications of the Great Recession ended because again like so they brought interest rates down so the economy was on the brink of collapse so one of the things they did was they brought interest rates down again to 1%. They made interest rates so cheap. It was so cheap to borrow money. And so then the high net worth individuals, people with their MBAs, people that understood money, right? They borrowed this money and then they put that money, they basically loaned that money to places where they thought they would get a higher return, right? Chasing returns. And then the thing was, it wasn't bad that they kept the interest rates at 1% for a year or 2 years or 3 years, but they just kept interest rates low for so damn long. And then COVID happened, right? COVID happened. And in March of 2020, right, the stock market tanked by like a quarter, 25%. And you know what I did? I said, yay! I said, thank God. Proof that our stock market still worked. Again, if you follow me for any length of time, you know this. I was worried about the stock market back then. I was talking about black swan events back in 2019, right? Because remember when Lewis was looking to rent a new storefront in New York City? And I was literally giving him shit because I was like, you know, a black swan event is on the horizon and you're willing to sign a 10-year lease in New York City. I was giving him so much shit because the world works how it works. Psychohistory, motherfuckers. It's psychohistory. It's just how it happens, right? Anyways, right? So I was worried because it was like, the stock market keeps going up and this is stupid. And so when COVID hit, stock market dropped by like 25%. And I was like, yes, the system works. The important thing here is that the system works. And then the stock market shot back up. And the stock market kept going up and up and up and up. And then it stopped going up. And so we have 1% interest rates. We have the stock market going up. And then the government just starts printing money. At 1% interest rates, the government just starts printing money and handing everybody money, right? Nancy Pelosi was asked because the federal stimulus checks were going out, and individuals that made like $75,000 a year or couples that made $150,000 a year, they were getting stimulus checks. And she was literally asked, she's like, well, aren't these stimulus checks for people that have been, hurt or whatever by COVID, hurt by this disaster? And she was like, everybody's been hurt by this disaster. And so basically the government just starts printing money and sending money to everybody at 1% interest rates. So then not only do we have this bubble of, again, tech companies and all this kind of stuff that's blown up because of 1% interest rates, but then the government starts printing money and just supercharges that entire damn process. And so now we're in this world, again, we were already having these issues, where interest rates are going up as the government stops printing money. And now the Trump administration is jacking tariffs through the roof, jacking taxes. That's what he's doing. He's jacking taxes through the roof, non-progressive taxes. If you buy something, you're paying a big-ass tax on it. Again, trying to start a goddamn trade war. Anybody else feeling nauseous right now? Anybody else want to go into a corner and vomit for a little while? Because I think this is going to be a snitch show. And again, like what? If you have generations that are used to recessions, right? Recession happens every decade. You're pretty used to it. Right? Then how badly does a recession shake you? Right? You come out of the recession, you feel pretty comfortable, you move on. But again, with younger folks, if you haven't had a recession in 16 years, again, you may have skipped out of it. You may not have even really dealt with a recession for 20 years. Motherfucker, you economically get kneecapped. One of the interesting questions, does that create like an economic PTSD? Will you ever trust the economy again? And again, our economy is built off of trust. It's built off of you being willing to buy. It's built off of you being willing to take a mortgage. if you have people that had faith in the system, unreasonable faith in our economic system, and they get kneecapped because that's how it works, boys and girls, are they then going to have PTSD going into the future and never trust the system again? And if they never trust the system again, what does that do for the system? I'm just gonna go vomit now. I'm just gonna go vomit. So, anyways, I don't know. I'm gonna keep working on Silicon Dojo. Gonna keep working on Silicon Dojo. Gonna keep doing classes. Gonna keep pushing my ball forward. As Congress keeps kicking their can down the road, I'll keep pushing my ball forward. Hopefully, if enough of us push our balls forward far enough, I don't know, maybe we can catch up with that can and throw it in the damn recycling bin or something. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Don't worry. If you're depressed, if you want, again, that's the important thing. If you're nervous, if you're depressed, if you're nauseous, if you're about to have a fucking mental breakdown, here's the thing that I want you to understand. That is perfectly understandable. There is no disgrace in having mental issues with what is currently happening. The disgrace is if you don't get your ass back up again and start pushing the ball forward. Again, go have a cry, have a vomit, have 6 too many beers, and then wake up in the morning and push the damn ball forward. That's the only way we get past the mess. Anyways, see y'all later.